I am joined by Dr. Leslie Parrott, and I'm so excited because Dr. Chapman, Gary Chapman, was on last week talking about handling teens and conflict. So if you have any teens in conflict, listen to that one from last week. But this week, we are talking about their brand new book that the Parrotts and Dr. Chapman have written together, and it is The Love Language That Matters Most. Leslie, so good to have you.
Oh, what a joy to be here. And I mean, our colleague, Gary Chapman, does such good work. And who's ever had a teen and not had a conflict? So that must have been a valuable moment.
For sure. I was talking to Chris Fabry on the radio, and he was like, Dr. Chapman must pick people with bird names to write with, because he had the Parrots and I'm Pellicane, which looks like, so we had a good chuckle over that one. But
I love that.
Tell us about this book. So most of us have heard about the 5 love languages.
Yes.
But what is different about this book, The Love Language That Matters Most, versus me picking up the 5 love languages?
Exactly. I mean, you've been hiding under a rock if you haven't heard of the 5 love languages, because Gary gave us a treasure that helps us decode how to love, right? And I think, what is that? We affectionately call it the Purple Book, has sold over 20 million.
I love it, the Purple Book.
Decades, right? But there's still, unless, and I felt it in our own marriage, we felt it with the couples in our care, sometimes things still got lost in translation, right? And and we teamed up with Gary, Team Parrott and Gary Chapman, in order to sort of help couples go beyond. It's kind of the 2.0, right? Because love languages are fundamental. What an insight. But even though, like, for instance, my love language is words of affirmation, Les understood that so well, but he was pouring into me and giving me oodles of encouragement, just like my personal cheer squad. You can do it. Whatever thing came up, any opportunity, I believe in you. I know you could do this. You'd knock it out of the park. Well, I wasn't feeling deeply loved. I was feeling pressured, like, oh my goodness, do I have to do all those big things in order to be good enough? He didn't mean for me to, but that's because every language has a dialect. Some people love encouragement. I happen to lean into compliments. I like to hear that you love something I already did and saw how amazing it was, right? And so that's mine. And then other people just deeply feel loved if words of affirmation is at the top of their list, in the dialect of appreciation, just that someone pours gratitude and remembers long after the moment and thanks them, just for their presence in your life and that kind of thing.
That is so funny, because I am exactly like you. I am words of affirmation, but I took the assessment. So people can take an assessment that takes you, it's like kind of one layer deeper of what the dialects are. And I took that assessment and I realized, I don't like these words like, oh, you have it, you got this. I was like, no, I like it after the fact. Exactly what you said.
Oh, you are my soul sister.
Yes. So it was the exact same way. And I thought, how funny. Here's James trying to use words, because words is the thing.
Right.
He's physical touch. So, if I just go and like karate chop him all the time, right? It's like physical touch, but that's not doing anything.
I love that you said that, because again, what gets lost in translation? Physical touch is another one. I mean, the point is, with all the languages, when we parsed it out, we begin to see the nuances in loving. And there are over 22 different, dialects, like every language, you talked about teenagers at the start of this. Yeah. They talk their own dialect, right? And as soon as we figure out what they mean, it changes, right?
Right.
But there is a dialect to loving the people we love the most. And by the way, I think if it's not obvious, the love language that matters most is the love language of the person that we're trying to love, right? Whether it's our spouse or our child or a dear friend. Because I think what happened, and Gary didn't mean for it to, but so often people got so jazzed about discovering their own love language, they ended up focusing on that more than on learning and loving about the people in their life, which was always his goal. And that's where this kind of helps us to make that leap clearer so we can love, get that shortcut to their heart.
Isn't that funny? You would think the love language that matters most, well, obviously it's mine.
Right. It's just human
Instead of
nature.
instead of thinking, "Oh, it's yours," whoever it is that you're with. I love that. Talk about kind of the role of curiosity because, you might think like, "I know your, acts of service and your time, so I got that. I've lived with you for 20 years." How does curiosity put that spark in?
I love that question because nothing is a formula, right? We can't go, okay, so my husband acts of service. Well, I know the thing that helps you most is to save you time. And so if I just treat it like it's a formula and I stop being curious about how is he feeling right now in this season of life? What are his stressors? What would help him most? It's not that we don't all receive love in all the ways. So this is not we're passing an exam on love. This is we're dearly loving the person that we deeply want to love in our life. And so we need to stay curious and be attuned. And one good question, especially, I love the metaphor of the love tank. It's
Yes.
obviously a metaphor, but boy,
Yeah.
can we relate. We know how it feels when it's empty in our relationship with someone. We know that amazing feeling when it's just full to the brim and we're energized and feel deeply loved. And so, one thing you can do out of curiosity is to just say, what is one thing I could do to fill your love tank this week? And really, instead of thinking, I've got this, I know you, tune in, ask with
Yeah.
curiosity, understand, there's so much to learn. I love that you took the assessment because the 5 Love premium assessment is so cool. We've always had
Yeah.
it
And
still.
tell people how they can take it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You just look for, 5 Love premium assessment and if you just Google that, you're on
Yeah.
it. And it's not like the simple free one. This one takes some time and it takes a little investment, but boy, it's worth it because it unpacks your soul. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, it tells you your primary love language, your secondary love language. It helps you identify what might be a foreign love language for you. Like for instance, my foreign language is acts of service. That happens to be my husband's primary love language.
Primary. Of course it is.
Of course it is. Yeah, that's the story of as iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
But then that helps me to really get intentional. Because if I just am lazy and love organically, I'm going to love my way, not
Yeah.
the way that meets his heart,
So really like studying the assessment, when you look at your spouse's assessment, let's say you do this, after you look at it, what is like, how do you recommend putting into practice? How do we make that love a verb? Now I have this knowledge about my spouse. Let's pretend it's less and it's acts of service and you're reading this assessment. What might be your next step?
I mean, I love it. Just for anyone who's curious, who might be viewing this conversation, it is so fun to get the printout because
Yeah.
there's even a cheat sheet in here that summarizes how to love, and it tells you, it reminds you what their top love languages and what their dialects are. Like, for instance, on acts of service, what I learned for Les was that I used to think that just meant little caring thoughtfulnesses in his life. Well, he didn't mind those, but they weren't hitting the bullseye. What rocks his world is if I do something that saves him time, because anything that does that, that's life changing for him. Then he regroups some time to invest in something he loves, right? If I go stand in a long line at the post office, because we have a certified letter or something, and he didn't have to do that, he has never felt more loved.
Right. That's right. I love it. People think you're just standing there in the post office, but you are super duper loving your spouse right there at that. That's
That is
awesome.
super saturated line,
I
with
love it.
love. And it's like that. It
Yeah.
actually is so much fun to get into those little nuances.
Yeah.
And like you said, curiosity, which leads to empathy. This whole experience is like a shortcut to empathy, which is being deeply aware of the real landscape of the person you're trying to love's heart. I mean, and there's so many people, every one of us. I mean, Valentine's Day comes and goes on the calendar, and no matter if you just experienced that and it was a great success, or maybe you missed the mark, we think about all the occasions we have to give gifts to people we love, whether it's, something heartfelt and sentimental, or something very practical and maybe extravagant. Those are all dialects. And so it just makes you a hero when you really know and understand that pathway to the person's heart. Like for us, our two boys, one of them loves anything sentimental. I just found an old vintage book of children's poetry by A.A. Milne, and one of them treasured that. The other one would say, "What are you talking about? I want something practical,
Right.
like, renew my subscription on Adobe or something."
Right. That's so awesome. That's awesome. I feel like it's true, because you could picture giving to one child, here's your renewal for Adobe, and they'd be like, what is this for? And someone else is over the moon about it. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
How can you tell when you're getting it right and when you're getting it wrong?
Oh, I love that. I think whenever we're paying attention, we can tell, because here's the thing about the love tank. By the way, the love tank, even though it's just a metaphor, so powerful. That's one of the things that this book really unpacks in a deeper way than there's ever been any teaching on. Because love tanks aren't one size fits all, right? We all are shaped by the family that created us, by our own personality. That's another thing we deal with in this. As a matter of fact, Gary Chapman has said over the years, the most frequent question he ever got about love languages is, how does personality interact with these? And some personality dynamics, if you think about it, are more obvious, like introvert, extrovert.
Yeah.
If you're an introvert, you don't want someone to call you up in front of the church to give you words of affirmation and give you a big award. You want something heartfelt in private,
Right.
So you can begin to unpack personality. So if you're paying attention and you're allowing this new information to broaden your empathy and asking the magic question, which is always the follow-up question,
Yes.
what's one thing I could do to fill your love tank? And is there anything more about that would help me do a great job, or whatever it is?
Just one more question.
Yeah. Just
what would that look like for you?
Right. Not just saying, okay, got it, and letting your curiosity shut down. But the love tank, I mean, some of us, our love tank can actually spring a leak. There are things that empty it really fast. You've all been there, that one critical comment that came out and you realize, oh, I just sprung a leak in my spouse's love tank. And if you've ever followed Dr. John Gottman, he talks about something called the magic ratio, where it takes about 5 sincere, affirmations
Right.
to do one critical comment. So there's a little bit of a debt there we sometimes have to pay.
Yeah. So if someone's listening and you've already said 3 not so nice things to your spouse before they leave for work, you've got 15 when they get home today to kind of patch that up.
Yeah, it's enough to help us hold our tongue in a rash moment.
Isn't that funny?
Okay, that's going to create some extra work on my part.
Oh, that reminds me of like when I go to the spin instructor, this neighborhood spin class that my mom and I have been attending for 21 years, if you can believe that.
Wow.
And our spin instructor, she'll put out, like a little piece of candy, like a Snickers bar or something. And she'll say, you got to ride all class just to burn this off. Right. And then we think to ourselves, I don't want to eat that if I have to do that. So think of that insult. It's like, you're going to have to burn off a lot of things if you're going to insult your spouse. You better think twice before doing it in the first place. That's so
That is
funny.
the best, Arlene. That is the best. First of all, how impressive! 21 years
21
in
years.
your mom's spin class.
That's the joy of a system. It's just like you're in it and that's all we do.
I love it. And maybe, just maybe, one of you has quality time as your love language. And
Yes.
that is filling that love tank right up while
Isn't
you're
that sweet? It's true. It's true. You write in the book, The Love Language That Matters Most, our goal together isn't perfection,
yeah.
it's progress. Encourage us
Yeah.
in that regard.
You know what? I'm so glad you said that, because all of us are listening and we all know we don't do this perfectly. Life has seasons. We get distracted, overwhelmed. Sometimes we literally are just blind, to important things. And just because Les and I wrote this book with Gary Chapman doesn't mean any of the three of us are perfect at this either. But the good news is perfect isn't required in love.
Yeah.
It's just the practice of it. It's just keep trying, and every single win matters. And I think there's a statistic that always kind of floors me, that if you get it right 30% of the time, that's literally enough. It's
Wow.
good enough. So I hope that can be encouragement to anyone who feels like, I don't feel like I do this very well. It's okay. Give it a try. If you get it right 1/3 of the time,
Like you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to remind my family that at dinner time. Okay, you didn't like that meal? If I get 3 out of 10.
Oh, I am right on that.
I'm doing pretty good.
I am right on that.
With this book, after you completed it, you've turned it in, there it was. How do you think this kind of the tail of it is impacting you and Les in your marriage?
It's pretty profound, because loving obviously is at the heart of what makes our life satisfying. And we all know that loving people is layered, it's complicated. And, what a gift to have this decoder to help us do that well. And when you realize somebody's love tank is running low on a certain day, to go, okay, I know how to fill that up, instead of being discouraged and feeling a little, hopeless.
Yeah.
You go, oh, I've got a tool, I can lean in. And one of the things Gary always emphasizes, we don't do this in order to be loved in return. But the gift is that when someone's love tank is full, there's so much contagion and synergy in that, because it just spills over with love and reciprocity,
Yeah.
Whether it's our kids or our spouse or our small group of friends. This is such a beautiful gift. There's synergy in it. It's contagious. You can do one brave, small act of love, and it literally can start transforming a connection.
So it'd be like, wait, what? This is out of the ordinary. What is happening? But I'm going to ask you about love languages in kids in a moment. But before I do that, I want to ask, how could this book be so perfect for someone entering the empty nest?
Oh, I love that question. Well, one thing we know is that success at that new stage, any new stage, whether it's empty nest or at the very beginning of a relationship, you can't rely on old assumptions about the person you're with. So this gives you a new way of discovery. Who is this person now on their growing edge? Because love languages are fairly settled, but they're not like personality dynamics where they're unchanging. One of the privileges of my life is I get to be a mentor mom to mothers of preschoolers. It used to be called MOPS, now it's called
Of course.
Moms.
Yeah.
Such a sweet season. And I admire these moms so much. Even if acts of service wasn't their top love language before. In this season, it becomes primary for a lot of them because
Yeah.
there's so much going on. So it's like that in an empty nest season. You
Yeah.
can't rely. And I know I'm speaking from experience because we just launched two boys who both got married this summer.
Oh,
We're in
wow.
grad school. It's a new season for us, 41 years of married life. And there's some things about if I rely on outdated assumptions about Les, I'm going to
Mm.
miss his heart.
Wow.
You know?
This is kind of amazing to me because you do get to that stage where you think, I know everything about this guy, right? Like my husband, James, we've been married 27 years. And I know exactly what he's going to do. I know how he's going to respond. I know what he's going to get triggered by. Like, I know. But then you approach like, wait a minute, let me see, like what you talk about, the landscape of the heart, like what's going on in him. Be curious. This is beautiful. Okay, now let's shift this question. Why is it important for the parent who is in the thick of things with their kids, but it's still important to do this love language stuff with their spouse in the child raising years?
I love that because more than ever, you often are focused as the giver in a relationship with your kids.
Yeah.
And so when the two of you are able to commit to keeping each other's love tanks full, you've got reserves for the tough moments when you're not getting the reciprocity. Even darling kids,
Right.
developmentally, they're not our peers. So they're not always able to, give those words of affirmation
Yeah.
or hang out and give us that quality time in a season where maybe peers are their whole world or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so when we can do that for each other, what a gift. I mean, I think that's why God gave us the gift of marriage and said it reflects his love more than any other relationship on earth because it is so deep in its ministry to our hearts,
It's beautiful.
And when we're able to love deeply, it gives us all the strength we need for those other roles that are more give than take.
You kind of alluded to this with that teenager who, wants to be with their peers. How do you shift? Let's say you've had this child in elementary school and you've just been all about this child. You've been doing their love language. You've been writing notes in their lunch. You do all the things. And then they turn into teenagers and you're like, wait a minute, how do you adjust that?
Yeah. Oh, those are good questions. I mean, this is where perception, curiosity, you know, learning to respond to their openings. And I think,
Yeah. Oh,
we're used
yes.
to, as parents, we're used to being initiators. And this is a little bit of a dance where we don't stop initiating and giving invitations and space, but we're also learning now to respond to the openings that we get. Sometimes they're trying hard to be independent, and other times they want to melt into a big hug and just be more like the kid in them because becoming a person requires brave independence and retreat back to safety. So, as long as you keep that space open in your heart and the invitation is there and your heart is soft and you don't take it personally when they're trying to bravely be the thing they didn't used to be because growing up is asking that of them, you know.
Yes.
And even if they connect through words, finding things that you can affirm them, that even if they don't show it,
Mhm.
it is transformative.
Yeah.
They may never be able to show you how much it means to them, but they carry it in their heart, you know? So
Yes.
just trusting I'm going to continue to love. I'm not their peer, I'm their parent. And so even if they can't give me reciprocity, I'm in it for the long game.
Yes. And even if your kids and your teenagers, they're familiar with the 5 love languages, like I've had my kids, take the test. They're ages 16, 19, 21 now. So I have a feel for what they are. So for instance, my son, Ethan, he is, a college graduate now. He works full time and he went away to college, but now he lives at home, which we love, but
Yeah.
he's never here, which is totally fine. Like that's that's what I would want for him. So he's very independent, very involved in church. He's doing great. He's doing fine. But I'll think, well, I haven't had words with you. Like it's been a week and I haven't talked to you.
For
And
sure.
I have noticed, like, if we just catch each other at the breakfast table and talk for 5 minutes, then boom, broop, I'm full. I'm good. But our conversation right now has made me realize I need to also ask him once in a while. I don't need to do this all the time, but once in a while, hey, Ethan, is there anything I can do to fill your love tank this week? That is an okay question to push his way, once in a while.
I love that. And what a gift that you recognize that he's not pushing you away.
Yeah.
He's trying to grow into all the things that he's expecting himself to be at this stage. And you're delighting in that, but you don't want to lose that thread of connection.
Right.
So if you can catch him at the breakfast table, that's where you do it. That is, you're modeling so much for us.
It's like I've read all these Jim Burns books about adult children. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try my best not to put myself in his business when it doesn't need to be that way.
Well, yeah, because sometimes space and time are love, right?
Yeah.
As
we close out, Leslie, what are some things that we didn't chat about the book, or anything even about Simbas that you would love to mention here as we close out?
Well, just the heart of our heart is for people to deeply feel loved and to succeed in loving deeply.
Yes.
And even when we're sincere about it, it can be complicated. And that's why we are so excited about these two resources, because they uncomplicate it and they give you fun insights. They spark great conversations, but more than anything, they sort of move the needle when it comes to you knowing, with confidence, I know I can really love the people who are dear to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a gift. Life doesn't get any sweeter than that, right?
Yeah.
And so what a joy for us to get to partner with Dr. Chapman and bring this, next level resource all around the love languages.
Yes. The book is The Love Language That Matters Most: How to Personalize Love So They Really Feel It, by Dr. Gary Chapman and Drs. Les and Leslie Parrott. Get it wherever books are sold. And Leslie, how can people find out about you and your husband, Les?
Well, they can always go to lesandleslie.com and, find us, Google our names and find us anywhere. But we are thrilled about everything that we do is intended to equip couples. So if they're looking for a good resource, we would love for them to discover it there.
And then I have to ask at the end, when you guys met each other, and you're like, I'm Les and I'm Leslie. Like, at what point did you realize, oh no, if we date and get married, we will be Les and Leslie?
That is such an absurd thing that I married someone with my own name, isn't it? Yeah. And we met as teenagers when someone hollered our name, and we both,
funny.
We happened to be on a ski slope. We both swished over thinking they were calling us. And that's how we met. So it's kind of crazy, isn't it?
That's adorable. Okay, that's another conversation, because my kids will love that you met on a ski slope, because all three of my kids are avid skiers and they would love to meet their spouse on a ski slope. Thank you, Leslie, so much. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.